We want to have it an interactive, engaging discussion, a conversation format. That's why we have the Slido over here. Join us for the conversation. You could just scan the QR code and put a question in there, and then inshallah we'll incorporate it in our conversation. And before we speak any further, it's been too long since we had our beloved Dr. Emad with us here for the Friday night program. And Dr. Emad is someone who's very dear to me. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him. He's a teacher of generations in our community. Many of the youth learned and benefited from his mentorship and his guidance and his teaching. And I remember it just like yesterday, Dr. Emad, when he used to pick me up and drop me off at home when we were in high school. Dr. Emad was my first steps to connecting with the masjid. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him and reward him and continue to allow him to serve the ummah of Muhammad. Allahumma ameen. And of course, Sheikh Ismail, an imam of our community, is ghani an al-ta'rif. So I believe it's going to be a very special conversation, inshaAllah ta'ala, with the three of them, with the three of us. And again, the topic is about the greatest companion. What we're hoping to achieve in this conversation is, how should I be thinking about the Quran? You know, what does it mean to have a healthy relationship with the Quran? What are the rights of the Quran upon me? You know, are there, everyone has a special personal journey with the Book of Allah. Sometimes it's stories and incidents and events in our lives, experiences, that realizations that come about through connecting with this book. So inshallah, we're hoping to touch upon many of the different subjects, the do's and don'ts. How can I make my connection with the Quran meaningful this Ramadan? So we're hoping to address these things in our conversation. And inshallah, I will pass it to our beloved Dr. Emad to start us off with opening thoughts. Jazakumullah khair.
Jazakumullah khair. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. I just want to say that it's my honor and pleasure to be with my dear brother Sheikh Osamah and Sheikh Ismail, my two brothers, in the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our relationship has always been through the Quran and for the sake of Islam and for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I moved to Florida. Many of you maybe don't know me, and I moved to Florida 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago. And I come up to see my family every few months, and every time I come, I mentioned this to Sheikh Osamah some time back, that I see people getting older, right? My nieces and nephews, when I come, they were, toddlers, and the next time I come, they're crawling, then they're walking, now they're talking, now they, and this is, and now one of them is getting married, right? So subhanallah, how fast time goes by. And when I look back at my life, I didn't do much, but what Sheikh Osamah just mentioned, this is one of, I have many accomplishments in my life, but having a brother like Sheikh Osamah, who I just helped give a ride to the masjid for learning Quran, and a brother like Sheikh Ismail, and all these are the greatest accomplishments of my life. I've gotten tenure as a professor, I've written books, I've done all of these things. Nothing is an accomplishment like having an accomplishment in relationship with the Book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to always keep us connected with the Quran. There is, naturally, we all go through moments of having a hard heart. And if you look in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He actually addresses this idea of a hard heart. And He says, أَلَمْ يَأْنِ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. Isn't it time that the believer's heart softens for the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And the next verse here, Allah then shifts and He speaks about the earth. He says, اعلموا أن الله يحيي الأرض بعد موتها. Understand, let this sink in, that Allah gives life to the earth after it's dead. If you look at the earth in the winter, the tree is dead. The dirt has no vegetation growing out of it. After this period of having no vegetation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revives it. If you look in the Quran, one of the beautiful things is that when it speaks of rain and vegetation, many times these verses about rain, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاللَّهُ أَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, هُوَ الَّذِي وَهُوَ الَّذِي يُنْبِتُ الْأَرْضَ الزَّرْعَ وَالزَّيْتُونَ وَالنَّخِيلَ وَالْأَعْنَابِ. Allah mentions all of these different fruits and vegetations. They're usually connected to the Quran or revelation in some way, shape, or form. What does this tell us? It tells us that, if you look at different plants, some plants need to be watered every single day. There are some plants that if you don't water it every day and you don't give it exactly what it needs, it's going to die. It won't last long. And there are some other types of plants and vegetation that are, for example, in the desert. It gets rain once a year. But this rain once a year sustains it until the next time. And this is the nature of believers. Everybody needs to have some relationship with the Quran. The way the Quran is going to impact one person is not going to be like the other. So sometimes I will read the Quran and I will be impacted just until tomorrow. That's the nature of the person I am, right? I'll be impacted just until tomorrow, so I need to read it every single day. Some people, subhanAllah, they encounter a verse from the Quran, and it's so powerful that it moves them to be changed forever. It's said that one of the Bedouins came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he heard إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ زِلْزَالَهَا, this verse, this surah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says when the earth shakes. And towards the end of the surah, as you all know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, فَمَن يَعْمَلْ, whoever does in Adam's way of good will see it. And whoever does in Adam's way of bad will see it. The man, he said, this is enough. This is enough for me. This moved him so much that it was enough for him to go live his life now. These two verses are something he's going to see the whole world through. Every decision I make is going to be through these two verses of إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ زِلْزَالَهَا. And no matter how dead the heart may appear, the Quran can bring it back to life. And the Quran has power to bring something back to life, even if it doesn't understand the words themselves. And I'm going to share this story that a sister who actually converted here in ICPC when I was here, she was older at the time, she shared this beautiful conversion story. She was an older Hispanic sister. At the time, she's maybe 60. So she says, this is, by the way, we used to have these things called CDs, okay? So she was walking in Newark or East Orange, and she said this African-American Muslim just passed her a CD of the Quran. And she didn't really know what it was. She didn't really care. She just took it. And she said, she just threw it in her car. She said, one day I'm driving, and it's raining, and I'm stuck in traffic. So she said, let me just put this in and here. What is this thing that he gave me? I'm bored, I'm in traffic. And she says, I played the Quran, and she doesn't speak a word of English, a word of Arabic. And she said, I just started sobbing. And she said, I knew, my heart was telling me, she said, I understood, this is her quote, she said, I understood that this is the word of God without understanding the word of God. She didn't understand the word, but she said, something about this did this to me. The Quran has this power. Never did anyone listen to anything in Chinese or any foreign language and begin crying. Only the Quran has this power. And this Quran is something that we need to maintain our iman. This Quran is something that we need to continue having this softening of our heart. Once you go away from the Quran, the heart becomes hard. So with the month of Ramadan coming along, it's an opportunity to renew our relationship with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us for our shortcomings with the Quran and allow us to be people of the Quran.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair, Dr. Emad. He was, wow, this one's much stronger. I'm not fixing the mic here. There you go. So I wanted to just say, as I was listening to Dr. Emad, he said something really powerful that really struck me in the beginning and kind of gave me like a wake up, like goosebump. He said that he accomplished a lot of things in this world, and the greatest accomplishment he ever had or he ever made was anything to do with the Quran. He said, suhbah fil Quran, like the friendships he made in the Quran, like taking Sheikh Osamah from his house to the masjid, or I'm assuming also the Sheikh he used to read to, or any relationship he had with the Quran. So it got me thinking as well. And like if someone asks me anything about my own life, me personally, like the only thing I think of that was something that was good was anything to do with the Quran as well, like anything. And I was blessed with the opportunity to go to Egypt and study for many years and memorize a lot of the Quran. Alhamdulillah, I met a lot of people in Egypt that were just people I know for the sake of the Quran. And these relationships that I have with them, or I continue to have with them, are the best of all relationships. So I think anything that this Quran touches is blessed. And suhbah fil Quran, or having a companionship through the Quran, is the greatest type of friendship in the world. And anybody that reads Quran, or memorizes Quran, or revises Quran with someone, they know what I'm talking about. There's no such friendship like the friendship of the Quran. And I think of the brothers that come at Fajr for something called a Quran Halaqah. They have a Quran Halaqah in ICPC Patterson that's been ongoing. And they have certain brothers there that have been reading and going to that halaqah every day at Fajr consistently for over 30 years easily. And I say this because now I'm 32. And when I set off to Egypt, I was 18, 19. So I was going to ICPC Patterson. And there was a group of brothers there that used to read after Fajr, and I used to join them. And this was like, what now, 15 years ago? And they were reading, and they've been there for 15, 20 years. And now I came back, and life, and 5 years back, and so much has happened. It's been 15 years, and they're still there. And they're best friends. So I say this for us to see examples in our modern life, or examples in our actual life, that we see people that have these connections with the Quran. And I would think to myself, this brother that comes to Fajr to sit in this Quran halaqah, like, what is the motivational drive that makes him go every day at Fajr to sit in this halaqah to read Quran? And sometimes the brother will miss the salat al-Fajr, he'll pray at home, and he'll still come to the halaqah. I be leaving the masjid sometimes, and there's a brother, he's parking, and I said, is everything good? He goes, no, I'm going to go to join the halaqah. I said, wow, he like gets out of the comfort of his bed, and he's dying to go and sit with this halaqah so he could join the brothers at Fajr every single day. And the reason for that is he finds something there that he doesn't find anywhere else in the world. He finds something in this halaqah, he finds something there where he doesn't find anywhere else in the world. And that's the beauty of the Quran. That's the beauty of the Quran. And the individual that's touched by the beauty of the Quran, there's no going back. But you'll have to taste it to understand what we're speaking about. So the greatest blessing I ever had in my life was the opportunity for my two eyes to lay their sight or their vision on every single harf of the book of Allah. And I remember when I was memorizing, some people, they read Quran before they memorize. For me, no, 99% of the surahs I memorized, it was the first time I ever seen them or read their verses. I didn't read the Quran before I started memorizing. I didn't read it ever, like fully or half. So 99% of the time I'm reading, and it's the first time my eyes ever laid their vision on this word. My point is, when I was going through my own personal Quranic journey, I would fall in love with whatever I was memorizing deeply. Like I would have a deep, passionate love for Surah Anbiya, Surah Taha, Surah Maryam, Surah Araf, Surah Al-Anfal, Surah An-Naml. Any surah my eyes come across, I fall in love with it. So I say, oh, this is my favorite surah. So I'm thinking, oh, this is my favorite surah. Then I go to memorize the next surah, it becomes my favorite surah. Then I go to the next surah, it becomes my favorite surah. So I realized something when I was memorizing the Quran in this journey. I realized something. The Quran is all amazing. There is nothing like it in the world. And whatever is your favorite surah is what you're reading or what you're pondering on at that time, because the Quran is like this massive treasure trove. It's a treasure chest that doesn't stop giving. Its ata is forever. It's infinite in its giving. And then you see the things that this book does to people and how it touches and affects people. Of course, the Quran has many effects to it. It's a cure for the hearts. It cures mental illness. It cures physical illness. It cures your heart from spiritual diseases. وَشِفَاءٌ لِمَا فِي الصُّدُورِ, as Allah calls it. It's a very special book. And I see that now with Ramadan approaching, as Sheikh Osamah was mentioning in the intro, there's no better topic to begin talking about in this Ramadan season. As Sheikh Osamah was mentioning, we have these Ramadan vibes now. There's no better topic in the world than to talk about the Quran. There's nothing more important. As Sheikh Osamah also mentioned, because Ramadan is the month that Allah chose to reveal the Quran in it. And if we look at Ramadan as a month, we say Ramadan is the greatest month of the year. You know what's very interesting? We always say that Ramadan is the most virtuous and greatest month of the year. You know what's interesting? Ramadan is not one of the 4 famous sacred months. It's not one of the 4 sacred months which have a lot of virtue and importance, and it's more virtuous than all of them. You say, why is Ramadan singled out and special as the most virtuous month in the year? Because something touched it and made it the best. The Quran touched it and blessed it. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. Allah chose Ramadan to make the Quran get revealed in it. It became the best of all months. And then Allah chose a day to send down the Quran, Laylatul Qadr. And then Allah says, Laylatul Qadr خير من ألف شهر. Laylatul Qadr, the night in which Allah chose to reveal the Quran, is greater than 1,000 months. And then Allah chose a person to send the Quran down to, and that's the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah chose his chest and his heart to send the Quran down to him, and he's the greatest person to ever walk the face of the earth. And Allah chose Jibreel alayhi salam to be the Ameen and the person who comes down to send down the revelation of the Quran to the Prophet, and he's the greatest of all angels. And then Allah chooses a city and a location to commence the beginning of the revelation, and that's Mecca. And Mecca is the greatest of all cities. Anything the Quran touches is the best, and it's blessed. So we want to receive bounties. We don't want to just be Muslims who were born and raised Muslim, and our parents always tell us Quran, 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 and I know Quran is the best. I know I'm a Muslim. I know all these things about the Quran because my YouTube algorithms, all these people talking about the immense virtues of the Quran. But the question is, do I really have a spiritual connection to the Quran, and do I have an intimate bond and relationship with the Quran? And that's why we titled today's talk, The Greatest Companion. Because if you have a friend in this world, a friend has certain characteristics to them. You know, a friend is loyal, a friend is loving, a friend is giving, a friend is there to defend you. Man, the Quran should be your greatest friend in the world. The Quran will never let you down. The Quran is Allah. It translates to Allah because the Quran is the word of God. And you read the Quran should be your greatest companion in this world. We should all take, productive steps to conjure a relationship with the Quran. And I'll end with this. I want to just give some tips, like some basic tips to establish or to conjure or to begin having a relationship with the book. And the first step, or the first tip I give anybody, the first tip is you have to embark upon this journey with sincerity. Because if you go to read the Quran and you're not sincere in your heart and you're not feeling it, it's not going to work. You have to want to open the Quran and read it yourself. You have to. So like Sheikh Osamah mentioned, Ramadan is coming, and Ramadan is a good opportunity to create a relationship with the Quran. You say, why is Ramadan a good opportunity? First of all, it's a blessed month. You're fasting all day. So you're not thinking of food all day, and you're not eating all day. So you become free. Your time becomes very free. You have free time because you're either eating or thinking of what you're going to eat next. So you become busy. You become mentally busy and physically busy. Now you're free. You should give time to the Quran. The number one deterrent that I see with people, the number one deterrent, or the thing that turns people off, and this is just from my personal life experience, what I see with people and my own self before I learn Arabic, is the lack of knowledge in the Arabic language or not knowing how to read Arabic. So I'm put off. From reading the Quran because I read a little and it's very exhausting and tiring and I don't understand it. And astaghfirullah for using this word, but I get bored or I get like off put quickly because I'm not understanding what I'm reading and I can't read with proficiency. So I like to say something here. Of course, we always get the brother that comes and say, but Sheikh, isn't the hadith for the Arabic? Yes, the virtue of reading Quran in Arabic is specific. Yes, it's very virtuous, as the Prophet said. For every letter, you get 10 rewards. That's Arabic. No, but that doesn't matter because we want to establish a bond in a relationship and we want to love the Quran and we want Allah to open up on us with a strong connection to the Quran and we want the Quran to be our greatest friend and we want to dream about the Quran and think about the Quran. We want this good relationship with the Quran. So how do you get that? By reading it in the language that you understand. So this is my ultimate piece of advice. Embark upon this journey with sincerity. Disconnect from your phone and your friends. And I'll say something crazy right now. Like Ramadan, you're going to be in the masjid all the time. Sometimes, in order to read Quran, you can't be in the masjid because everyone's in your face. Sometimes everyone's in your face. Sometimes you could read Quran in a secluded area or go to a masjid where no one knows you. My point is put in some effort to disconnect from people and internet so you could connect to the Quran and start reading the Quran in a language that you understand best. And there's many translations. You could open the Mustafa Khatab, the clear Quran, and you could read from it. And Mustafa Khatab, by the way, it took him 15 years to translate the Quran. Because the clear Quran, you go to ICPC Clifton, you knock on Sheikh Osamah's door, you say, can I have a Quran? He'll give you a free copy because we want to spread the word of God to everyone. People come to my masjid, I give them free copies. We always have every masjid that has free copies of the clear Quran. So perhaps we take it lightly. Like we read it, we say, I don't like the usage of that word. He could use that word. Like you start to falsif and think, and you don't value this Quran. Mustafa Khatab, the author or the translator of the clear Quran, he was not the only translator. He had a team of about 30 people that were professional translators that worked with him. And they went over every single verse together and they discussed every single verse together. And this took about 15 years. And he has actually a podcast online. It's about 4.5 hours long where he speaks about this project, the Clear Quran. It was a project. He was from Al-Azhar. He's an Egyptian now. He lives in Canada. He's fluent in Arabic and English. He's a linguist. And he said sometimes I'd get stuck on the translation of certain verses and it would be a strong like hem in my heart. And he goes, I wouldn't be able to come to a conclusion and we discuss and I would like want to be 100%, so I'd stop and I'd leave it for the night and I'd pray istikhara and I keep praying istikhara like it's Mubarak. So you could clear Quran or any Quran, you go to Quran.com and you have translations and there's like 30 that pop up. You could switch through them and pick your favorite one. My whole point is exert some effort to establish a relationship with this book. And once you start reading Quran with sincerity in this manner, you start to fall in love with it because then it's different. When you read law and regulation in the Quran, like when God tells you don't drink alcohol and don't eat pork and don't do this and don't commit zina, it hits differently. It hits you differently because it's Allah speaking directly to you. Then when you heard these things your whole life, inshallah we ask Allah to grant us all the relationship with the book of Allah. Inshallah we could implement some of these tips and I speak to myself first, inshallah.
MashaAllah. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Ismail. Allah yahfadhkum ya Rabb. Jazakallah khair for mentioning some of the advices and the pointers. If I may add to that, and it takes me back to some of the things that we mentioned in the beginning. I do believe that it's important to take a journey with the Quran. The Quran is a book with a treasure trove of information, endless amount of information. You spend a lifetime trying to uncover and discover all the meanings in the Book of Allah. You will not reach its end. That's why they say it's a sea without a shore. بحر لا ساحل له. You know, and that's why you have books of tafsir, some of them that are more than 20 volumes long. With all of this information, the power in the Book of Allah Azza wa Jal is also more intimate in that it's experiential. There's something about the Quran that I need to experience. Yeah, there's a ton of information, but sometimes a dose of this information may change my life. And you know, that's what happened to the jinn. There's this verse in the Quran, it's very deep. It says, what? قُلْ أُوحِيَ إِلَيَّ أَنَّهُ اسْتَمَعَ نَفَرٌ مِنَ الْجِنِّ فقالوا إنا سمعنا قرآنا عجبا يهدي إلى الرشد فآمنا به ولن نشرك بربنا أحدا. Here, like if you understand the language there, the jinn, as soon as they heard the Quran, فآمنا به, there's this immediacy to it. They surrendered because it hit their hearts. And that's what the Quran is described as in another verse. إنا سنلقي عليك قولا ثقيلا. The power of the Quran is not in the weight of its information. The power of the Quran in its capacity to penetrate layers of darkness that are all on my heart. And that's something that's very experiential. And you know, the Quran has introduced me to some of the dearest people that I found in my life. And one of these dear people, I remember he had this certain habit with the Quran where he would spend some time just randomly opening the Quran and seeing what verse his eye falls upon, and seeing what meaning hits him first as soon as his eyes see that verse. You know, because if I want to speak to Allah Azza wa Jal, what do? I make dua. If I want to hear Allah's address to me, what do? I read Quran. So he enjoyed, because every verse has this meaning that is exclusive to me in my personal life, with my circumstances. In those verses, if I think of them through the lens of what I'm going through in my life, that verse will mean something special to me that maybe perhaps others won't realize. Right? That's the power of the Book of Allah Azza wa Jal. So it's a very experiential journey. And, you know, I would be, you know, I think it's appropriate to say that perhaps, you know, one of the dearest people to me in my life that I met through the Quran is my Quran teacher. It's actually someone that gathers me and Sheikh Emad, our Quran teacher, Sheikh Hafidh Muhammad Sidat. He actually passed away nearly 10 years ago. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on him. But, you know, a person of the Quran and a person who I got my first introductions to the masjid through the Book of Allah Azza wa Jal. And alhamdulillah, for those relationships that are built around the Book of Allah. Sheikh Ismail mentioned a few about some brothers in halaqat in the masjid. You know, and I think every one of us, if we think of our connections with the Book of Allah, we'll find sometimes that this connection, this Quran, leads us down certain paths and certain interactions that can transform us and change us. We should look for those types of relationships through the Quran. You know, the Prophet ﷺ tells us to experience that. مَجْتَمَعَ قَوْمٌ فِي بَيْتٍ مِّن بُيُوتِ. There's this sense of ijtima' and togetherness that needs to be upon the Book of Allah. If I do that, then I'm going to get 4 gifts. What is that? I'm going to get the gift of Allah's mercy. The tranquility and peace is going to come to my heart. The mercy of Allah will descend upon that gathering. The angels will surround. And Allah will mention that gathering by those in His countenance. So there's a lot of blessings when it comes to the experience with the Book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I don't know if you have anything to add, Sheikh.
If you may, Sheikh, I want to ask Dr. Emad a question. What was it that pushed you or sparked you or made you want to start memorizing the Quran?
Subhanallah, this is a long story, but so I don't know if I want to get into like the details, but let me do it, inshallah. So when I was in 5th grade, my father, he took us and the family back to Palestine to learn the language and everything like this, and I lived there for 3 years. And during these 3 years, when I went there, I was American, you know, American child and whatnot. These 3 years, I experienced things that just completely break you off from materialism. There was nothing there. If I wanted, for example, if I wanted like a certain chocolate bar, like a Snickers or something like this, didn't have that. No American food. We lived in a place where a car would pass by every hour. It really took me away from dunya. And I was young at the time. And I began mixing with people there in school and everything else, and you begin to see that these people, they mature very fast because they need to be men very quickly. Long story short, I came to America. Like many American Muslims, you begin not fitting in. I experienced Arab culture, I came to American culture, I didn't fit in. And I didn't really identify with Arab culture completely because I'm American, and I didn't identify completely with American culture because it's also, I also have, we have a foot in both worlds. And then I started looking for something of meaning. And the second intifada happened. I was now in America, but I felt like this connection, like I felt like I needed to do something. I felt connected to this issue, so I started reading the Quran. And at the time, I started reading the Quran in English. And I'll never forget, it just hit different. It hit different. The Quran hits you different when you are coming to it seeking something. And I actually approached it initially very skeptical, like, how do I know this is actually the truth? How do I know this or that? And got my hands on a copy of the translation of the Quran. And I remember reading the English translation and just tears flowing down my face. And I'm only in 9th grade. I'm only 9th grade at this time. And from then on, I said, I want to memorize this book.
Where did you get the translation from? The masjid?
Yeah, from the masjid. Yeah, I think it was from the masjid. So I guess the appeal of the Quran is in so many ways. Sometimes, subhanAllah, the Quran will appeal. If you look at the Quran itself, it appeals to someone intellectually. Sometimes someone needs an intellectual argument. The Quran engages people intellectually. Sometimes someone needs an emotional appeal. And the Quran is actually a book that appeals to emotion. If you look, we don't read the Quran. The Quran is not read, it's recited. When you open the Quran, we don't read it like a newspaper or a children's book. You're supposed to recite the Quran. Why recitation? Because recitation appeals to emotion. And this appeal to emotion is part of the beauty of the Quran. Even the language of the Quran, and this is something, when we say the Quran has a literary miracle in it, you don't always need to know Arabic to fully get the picture. I'll give you an example. The med in the Quran, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَيَذَرُونَ وَرَاءَهُمْ يَوْمًا ثَقِيلًا. The Quran is speaking of the disbelievers, and it says they put behind them the day of judgment. Meaning they are so far away from that, you get an image just from the sound of the Quran itself, right? You can picture distance just from the med in the Quran itself. And when you experience the Quran like this, subhanAllah, it just hits different. The rhythm of the Quran. There's the Quran, there's two things. There's poetry and prose, right? Or if you want to say like singing or noises, rhythm. And there's something else that's just prose. Prose just means like the normal text. So sometimes, if you know someone who listens to music, and I know no one here does that, but someone who listens to music, the rhythm is there. The rhythm is there, right? But if you take away the rhythm, take away the beat, and go print the lyrics, you will say, this makes no sense, right? You'll say, oh my God, he says, I got a gold chain, and I went to the club, and I went and got this, and I got that, and I got this. There's no meaning there, but with the beat, there's a rhythm. And sometimes you read something, and you say, wow, this is very powerful, but there's no rhythm to it. The Quran brings two together in a very powerful, succinct way, and it just gives you an ultimate punch. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He just opens the Quran, He just opens a surah with a declaration, Ar-Rahman, Allama al-Quran, Khalaqa al-Insan, Allamahu al-Bayan. And this rhythm, it mixes both together, and this is something the Arabs, they could not match. They were masters of the poetry. They were the rap battles, right? They had like the rap battles, like the poetry battle at the time of the Arabs. You ever see two people having a rap battle where one is dissing the other, and everyone's like, oh, yo, you got him, and everyone goes crazy. The Arabs were something like that, not identical, but they used to have poetry battles like this. The Quran came, and the Quran is mic drop. They could not match the Quran at all. And part of this is also the confidence of the Quran itself. This brother converted to Islam, and he says, the reason I converted is because the confidence of the Quran. He says every book I ever opened in my life begins with an acknowledgement or an apology. Read any book. They used to say, I acknowledge the help of this person, that person. Any shortcomings in this book are mine. The Quran is different. The Quran says, Alif, Lam, Mim. The Quran opens like this. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. This is the book. There is no doubt in it. And then the Quran brings a challenge. Bring 10 surahs. Bring 1 surah. And then it says, فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّن مِثْلِهِ. It says, bring a surah, not like it. It says, from the like of it. From the like of it. Meaning, I'm going to lower the bar so low. I don't even want a surah like it. Here it is. And then it says, فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُونَ. If you don't. وَلَن تَفْعَلُونَ. You never will. Look at the confidence of the Quran. Look at this in itself. It appeals to someone who, if you approach the Quran, you think the Quran has any doubt in itself. The Quran is the most confident book in itself. The Quran predicts its preservation in the time of Mecca. Surah Al-Hijr is a Meccan surah. When the Muslims are few, it says, we have sent down the dhikr, وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. I end, inshallah, with this. SubhanAllah, sometimes the Quran, it gives, as I gave my khutbah on this today, basically, one of the greatest things of the Quran is it changes your perspective on the world. You could be going through the worst situation in the world, like our brothers and sisters in Gaza. And the Quran gives you strength that the person who does not have the Quran cannot comprehend. They cannot understand. They cannot understand where does this person get this spiritual strength from? They cannot comprehend where this comes from. This comes from the Quran itself. You see in Gaza, I saw a few days ago, 500 students, 500 young people memorize the Quran in this difficulty that they are going in. 500 people are memorizing the Quran, living with the Quran, all of this stuff. It gives them a sense of power that you cannot break the person who has the Quran. And the point I mentioned today in the khutbah, one of the companions, the Quran changes your perspective even on death. One of the companions was dying on the battlefield. And from the dunya perspective, we look at it as loss. He says, فُزْتُ وَرَبِّ الْكَعْبَةِ. I have achieved success. وَرَبْ, by the Lord of the Kaaba. What made him see death as good? Nothing other than the Quran itself. Right?
Yeah, Dr. Emad, you mentioned coming back from Palestine at a young age and being stuck, not knowing if you're American or Arab, having a cultural, what do they call it?
Crisis or something. Yeah.
Identity crisis.
Yeah.
Like we all have. You go to your country of origin, they say, "Anta Mariki." They call you American. And then you come here, they say, "Oh, you're Arab." So how did you end up memorizing the Quran? That's the whole point. We want to get hit with inspiration. And you're someone who came at 9th grade not memorizing the Quran, and then you got pushed to wanting to memorize the Quran, and then I would assume you also sparked Sheikh Osamah's Quranic journey by picking him up and bringing him to the same Sheikh you were reading to. So how did you memorize the Quran?
So
and you're the esteemed guest, so please speak.
So I memorized the Quran. Yeah. Basically, I came to the masjid. My father, of course, deserves all credit because one thing that made me want to read the Quran to begin with is that I used to work with my father, and we used to have long drives. And subhanAllah, during these drives, he would just say things to me. And sometimes, you say things to someone, and you don't know if they're listening or not. But he used to say things to me like, these people who pray in the masjid 5 times a day, they're better than us, we need to go to the masjid more, and stuff like this. And we used to go to a masjid in Newark and for Jum'ah, because we're working in that area, and I used to listen to the khutbah. And subhanAllah, there was a brother who used to make the announcements. He wasn't a scholar or anything, he just made the announcements. And I remember thinking to myself, I want to be like this man. There was something about him where he looked pure, he looked clean, he looked happy. And I said, subhanAllah, there's some noor in this man, I want to be like him. So eventually my father, he brought me to ICPC Patterson. He introduced me to Sheikh Al-Tanani. And Sheikh Al-Tanani, he's busy, he was going into his office, he's holding the keys, and he's like, كيف حالك حبيبي تعال على الدرس يوم الأربعاء, come to the class on Wednesday. And I don't know if Sheikh Al-Tanani thought I was going to come or not, but I showed up. And it was a small class just for a few brothers who learned English, learning Islam in English. And Sheikh Al-Tanani, he said, memorize a surah. So I memorized Surah Amma Yatasa'alun, and I came to him. And Sheikh Al-Tanani was a little surprised that I memorized it. So he said, okay, next week you come with Surah Nazi'at. And I came with Surah Nazi'at. And then Sheikh Al-Tanani, he said, I have a tajweed class. So I went to the tajweed class, and Sheikh Hafiz, the teacher of me and Sheikh Osamah, he was there. And this is an older Pakistani gentleman who was retired and just walking around the masjid reciting Quran. He volunteered. He said, if anyone wants to learn Quran, I'm willing. So I went to him and I took him up on the offer. And he said, but I don't have a car. You have to come and pick me up. So every day I would finish school, high school, and I would go home. I would eat my lunch, do my homework. I would drive to his house, pick him up, and we would spend from Asr until Isha every single day. From Asr until Isha in the masjid, memorizing Quran. This is no cell phones. We didn't have cell phones yet. This is pre-2008. It was very boring at times because you're just, we weren't like, there's no maybe bored isn't the right word, but you cannot expect it to be an easy journey. You must put in the effort. So every day I would pick him up and we'd memorize. And then because I was in the masjid with Quran, I started teaching Sunday school, and that's where I met Sheikh Osamah. And I saw some, when you teach, you see some gifted people, and I said, Sheikh Osamah, why don't you come memorize Quran with me? And he's like, okay, but I don't have a ride. So I said, okay, I'll pick you up, and then we'll go pick up Sheikh Hafiz, and then we'll go to Patterson, right? And we were doing this for some time.
Emad, I have a serious question.
Yeah.
When you were teaching Sheikh Osamah in Sunday school, did you know he was going to be a big sheikh?
Honestly, no, I didn't know Sheikh because when I met him, he was in middle school. So Sheikh I didn't see it coming. No, I didn't see it, but I knew.
But you saw he had like a light.
Yeah, exactly. I saw a light and a willingness to learn, and Sheikh Osamah used to always ask me questions. What is this? What is that? What is this? What is that? And it made me excited because I said, someone wants to learn and it benefits me, and we benefited from each other. And then Abu Na'im used to pray Qiyamul Layl every Saturday night. So we started going to that. And these are small things that pushed me to the memorization of the Quran. But the Quran, it is the greatest thing of my life. There's a story I always mention, but there's a brother, dear brother to me. ICPC, they used to have in the side room karate. And he was my friend. And I don't say this as though I'm better than him, I'm not. But he was getting his black belt and I was memorizing Quran. I said to him, come memorize Quran. He's like, no, I'm going to do my black belt. So subhanAllah, I finished the Quran. And again, I'm not saying this, wallahi, he's a great brother. I'm not saying this in any way to say, a'udhu billah, that I'm better than him. I'm not saying that. I'm not. My intention was just the time and effort you put into something, it gives back to you. So he got his black belt and I finished the Quran. And some time goes by and I'm joking with him and he says, I should have memorized the Quran with you. If you have the time now, put in the effort. Spend 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day. If you don't want to give that much, whatever you can give. But my point is, the more you give, the more you get.
Ahmad, sometimes when people hear of other people that memorized the Quran, they think it was easy and you were gifted and you had Arabic. Is that the case? It was just easy a walk in the park for you to memorize?
No, of course not. Of course, I remember, I'm sure both of you remember surahs you memorized that were very difficult to memorize. And I remember sometimes even crying, especially in the beginning. Like I was trying to memorize certain surahs and Juz' Tabarak. They were very hard, and because I was new to memorizing, I couldn't, I'm as easy because they're short surahs. But when you encounter these, it requires struggle. But subhanAllah, you're in the masjid. And when you're doing this, I remember I'm gonna say this. I remember a lot of times we'd be praying Isha, and I'd be praying next to Sheikh Osamah, and he would be crying. And I would be crying, and Sheikh Hafiz would be crying.
Wow.
The reason is because we were spending hours with the Quran before anyone came for Isha. Wow. Right? When you have the Quran with you, subhanAllah, when you hear it then, it hits you different. Allah gives you gifts. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives you these gifts.
Sheikh, just to zoom out, I share this a lot with people when it comes to connecting with the Quran. Obviously the journey with the Quran is not just about memorization. Of course not. But I guess for anyone who's memorized, and I'm sure you feel the same way, Sheikh Ismail and Dr. Emad, memorization is an outlet to having a deeper connection with the Quran. And that's why I believe memorization is very important, because it forces you to focus. It forces you to focus on the Quran verse by verse, page by page. And sometimes that focus leads to a bigger transformation. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes someone may choose just to be a vessel that carries the Quran, but doesn't really live by it, and that's a very unfortunate reality. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to protect us from that the Quran be proof against us, not for us. Sometimes that does happen, where someone might memorize the entire Quran, but not lead a life that reflects the meanings of the Quran. However, the fact that it forces to focus gives so much opportunity. Like I said, Sheikh Dr. Emad just shared a bunch of life stories, and as he was talking, I was reflecting myself on the memories I have with that journey, and that's open for everybody in a very unique, exclusive way to you, how it's going to apply to you. Maybe perhaps you won't memorize the entire Quran, but maybe perhaps those key connections with the Quran will save you from depression, will save you from a very dark place that you find yourself in your life, a very difficult trial, a struggle. It's very beautiful how Dr. Emad mentioned the people of Gaza and 500 kids memorizing Quran. I'll never forget the image of that boy who they were doing some procedure on, and they have no anesthesia, so the only thing he could do is just recite Quran to try to get his focus off the pain of what they're doing to his head. So those are all experiences that people have with the Quran. It's a very personal journey. My personal journey perhaps led me to meet certain individuals and connect with the masjid in a certain way. I'll never forget. I love those days, the days that I would spend like 2-3 days at a time in the masjid.
Wow.
It wasn't an official i'tikaf. I would just stay there and then come back after the weekend's done home, like I've gone on a mini trip. But it's beautiful days, or those days where it just led you to the roof of the masjid, where you're not supposed to have access to it, just sitting there reviewing and memorizing Quran. They're beautiful things. But for you or anyone here, it might be a different story. I'll never forget when you mentioned the story of someone guided to Islam. I'll never forget this story that was shared with me. This brother gives a translation of the Quran to somebody, and he talks to them about Islam and gives them da'wah. And this person doesn't really pay much attention to it, and they take this Quran back home, they put it in their library, and then, lo and behold, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills. Actually, I think I heard this story from you. I'm not sure. It might have been you or someone else. But the point is, lo and behold, someone in the family finds this Quran in the house, starts reading it, and their heart opens up to it, and Allah willed that not the person given da'wah was guided, but the person who found the book in their house because of someone taking it home. That's how it is. The words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are transformational. And there's a reason why the Prophet ﷺ tells us the one who doesn't have Quran within is like a ruined home. I need this Quran inside me. Not in terms of memorizing it. I need its meanings. I need its nude, its guidance. I need that inside me. I need it part of my life, right? So that's how I look at it, Dr. Emad. There is a question that we got here I think could be useful. I don't know if you guys can embellish. What do you guys think? This question here is, can you share what you feel is the most powerful miracle of the Quran, personally? What would you say to that?
No, go ahead.
I don't know if there's one most powerful.
Or your favorite miracle.
Yeah.
So can you each share your favorite miracle of the Quran?
Yes.
That's how it's worded.
For me, honestly, my favorite miracle of the Quran is that when you go back to the Quran, it always reassures you. You say to yourself, there is no way this book can be from anyone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every single time in the Quran tells us this. If you have doubt about it, then read this Quran. Come back to the Quran and read it, and you will see that this book is definitely from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you can discover this from multiple angles. You can look at it from the preservation standpoint. If you think of this, the memorization of the Quran itself is a miracle. The fact that millions of Muslims around the world have something of the Quran memorized, this is a miracle, right? This gives me confidence that this book is preserved. When I know this book is preserved, or when I look in the Quran and it mentions, for example, the confidence in which it speaks, or for example, if you read something that's historically accurate in the Quran, or scientifically accurate, or anything like this linguistically, or the sound of the Quran, when you have all of these together, it just gives you comfort that I know for sure this is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For us, it's an easy task to prove intellectually that this is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is not the case with other scriptures. That's not the case at all. For us to have this in itself is very powerful. We know I don't think there's any Muslim in the world who you go to and they will have doubt about the Quran. Some people have doubt about hadith. Some people say, I don't really know, did the Prophet really say this? I don't really know, this doesn't, maybe this doesn't sit well with me. But nobody, no Muslim has doubt that the Quran is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This gives you the absolute reassurance.
I was thinking right now, what Dr. Ahmad said in the beginning, to answer the question, he said that it makes your iman stronger. I think before, I had Quran in my life. which is the majority of my youth, before I had access to Quran, reading it and spending time with it, I didn't realize how much of an iman boost the Quran actually is. So the person who's not reading Quran and spending time with the Quran, he doesn't know what he's missing out on. He's missing out on a strong iman booster. Because we talk about, I need an iman boost. You have someone, he comes, he says, Sheikh, I want to go to Umrah because my iman is low. He has to spend money to go to Umrah to gain an iman. Iman is gained in the masjid here in Clifton. You come to the masjid and Salat al-Jama'ah, you get iman. You read Quran, you get iman. So there's certain things that give you stronger iman boosts or quicker iman boosts. There's nothing like the Quran in the world. Because you're spending time with the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like Dr. Emad, sometimes I'd be talking to him, I'm in Egypt and keeping up with him here and there. And he goes, every time you feel down or you have any doubt, he goes, every time I have doubt, he used to tell me this one tip. He's like, every time I have any doubt in Islam at all, I just open the Quran and my doubt is removed. He goes, because you're human sometimes, but inshallah you get to the point where your iman is rock solid and you don't ever think like this. But I'm saying naturally people sometimes think, you open the Quran and you read it and it really affects you differently. There's nothing like a Quranic iman boost. But I was thinking when you guys were sharing some stories of the beautiful Quranic journey, I was thinking to myself earlier today, getting ready for this talk, I was thinking to myself, and when I was in Egypt, I lived in the dorms of Al-Azhar, so I lived in a single room. So I'd be by myself in my room, and I didn't have access to internet. I didn't have a smartphone or internet for like 6 years. So what I'm trying to say is I'd be lonely, because I'm there by myself. My family's here in New Jersey. And I just thought of it today. It really hit me really hard. So when I was in Egypt, in the dorms of Al-Azhar, on Shara Ahmed Saeed, in my room by myself, I was like physically lonely, like far from my family. Wallahi, I never felt lonely a day in Egypt. Wallahi, I never felt lonely 1% in Egypt because I was reading Quran every day. Now I'm here in New Jersey, family all around me, 3 ICPCs, love everywhere, suhbah, friends everywhere, every restaurant and every type of food halal you could think of. Mata' ad-dunya. Though everything in front of you, internet super fast everywhere you go, Wi-Fi everywhere. You don't know what this means, brother. You're American. Go to Egypt, bro. Like go and see what difficulty is in the world. And I was thinking about this special room I spent like 5 years in the dorms. Every day I woke up, I'm very OCD and clean. Like I'd wake up and there'd be new dust on the table. I'd go and I clean the new dust because I want to make the table that I memorize the Quran on like nice and beautiful because I'm going to put the Quran on it. And I'd put my Quran on a certain spot on the shelf and I'd pick it up. And every day the Quran would be like a little worn off more. It'd be a little worn off more because you're holding it and you're sweating and you're it's hot. There's no air condition. So fan here, dust everywhere. And I don't know, I was just thinking today, like, wallahi, I never felt lonely a day in Egypt. And I thought about it, it's because I was living with the Quran a lot. Every day I'm memorizing and revising. Every day memorizing and revising. And there's times where you'd feel down. But this one really today I was thinking about this one. You know why? Because you come here, it's modern society, and a lot of people do something called therapy. And that's good. May Allah bless everyone and grant everyone ease, Wallahi, the Quran is the greatest therapy in the world. There's no greater therapy than the Quran. There's nothing like it in the world. Like it grants you mental clarity. You spending a long time with the Quran means basically you're speaking to Allah for like that time, or Allah is speaking to you if you want to say, because you're reading the Quran. And this question is a beautiful question. What is your favorite miracle of the Quran? I would say for me, this Quran is very special and there's many miraculous aspects to it. But the number one thing that I would say that I love miracle-wise from the Quran, the book of Allah, is there's never a time in my life ever. And I'm not saying this in being exaggerative. I really mean this. There's never a time where I opened this book and read it with sincerity after making wudu and like doing iqbal alayhi and wanting to read it, except Allah gave me what I needed that day. There's never a day I opened the Quran and read it except I got the medication I needed that day. Because you go to the doctor, you say my foot hurts, he gives you medication, right? You go, so you have this issue, he gives you medication for this issue. Strep throat, he gives you this medication for that issue. You call your uncle, he's a pharmacist, he says take this medicine. These are the medications you need for your physical illnesses, or you need remedies. The Quran is the greatest medication in the world for your mental health and for your physical health and for your spiritual health. It grants you iman. And after sitting with the Quran one-on-one, you're sitting with Allah one-on-one, because Quran means you're sitting with Allah. And I want to keep emphasizing this point, because when you pray, it's like you're speaking to Allah, and inshallah we all pray. So we're praying, we have the dosage of this thing called salah in our lives. We have like some dosages. Some people have 50 milligrams, some people have 500, depends on how much they pray. And you need salah, but you also need Quran. You need Allah to speak to you. But really, this thing that we're speaking about can only be tasted if you go on and embark upon it. That's why we say it with love, and like we say this sincerely. You have to embark upon this in order to feel what we're feeling, in order to taste what we taste. And I'm sure that thing that Dr. Emad tasted, he wanted it for Sheikh Osamah when he saw that he had a spark to him, so he brought him. And look how many people they both touched because of the blessings of the Quran in their hearts. Look how many people Dr. Emad touched. 3 generations of Shabab ICPC. Look how many people Sheikh Osamah has touched. He's been an imam for like 8 years now, Sheikh? 10. Allahu Akbar. Allahumma barak. Allahumma zid wa barak. Look how many lives they're touching. Why do they have this ability to touch the lives of others? I'll tell you all, it's a small secret. They have something called Quran in their hearts. This Quran is the mustard of all good. It's the source of all good. There's a beautiful story in the Seerah. I love this story so much about the Quran and the status of the Quran and what is this Quran. Before I go to the story, we want you all to taste what we tasted and to taste what the guys at Fajr taste in the Quran halaqah. Because Dr. Muhammad Salvani, may Allah prolong his life and grant him barakah, he probably did, I would assume, 500 khatmas or 400 khatmas in that Fajr. They do a khatma every couple months, and he's been doing it for 30 years. Why are they addicted? Like, why are they addicted to going to sit in the masjid from 5:30 to 6:30 in the morning when everyone else is cranky and they need coffee and they want to start their day at home and needs 3 hours to wake up? But they're up like this because it's like an addictive drug that's good for you. Drugs are bad for you. The Quran is good for you. There's nothing better than it. It tastes good. And you live with God, and it uplifts your soul and your spirit. So there's this beautiful story. There's this guy, his name is Nafi' ibn Abd al-Harith. Nafi' ibn Abd al-Harith. He was a Sahabi. He converted in the Fatah of Mecca, in the conquest of Mecca. And Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab, he was the Amir al-Mu'mineen. He was the second Khalifa. After the Prophet passed away, Sayyidina Abu Bakr took the Khilafah, and then Sayyidina Umar. So the Khilafah is based out of Medina. Sayyidina Umar is in charge. So Sayyidina Umar places people in charge of other states or provinces. So we have the province of Mecca al-Mukarramah, and he puts someone called Nafi' ibn Abd al-Harith as the wali of this province. And this province is Mecca and the surrounding areas like Ta'if. So Sayyidina Umar goes for Hajj, and he's in a place called Usfan. Usfan is 80 kilometers north of Mecca. If you look at Google Maps, you type Usfan, 80 kilometers north, and it's on the street, it's on the highway or the motorway, as they say in the UK, it's on the motorway that takes you up to Mecca, it takes you up to Medina, this highway. So they have something called rest stops or rest areas, or service stations. You stop when you go drive from New Jersey to Virginia, you stop when you have to fill gas and pray salah and make wudu. They had the same thing back then. So Umar ibn al-Khattab, he summons up Nafi' ibn Abd al-Harith to speak to him about something on his way to Hajj. So Nafi' meets Sayyidina Umar there in Usfan, north of Mecca, 80 miles north. So Sayyidina Umar, he asks him, because Sayyidina Umar is in charge of everything. He wants to know, who did you place in charge? He goes, who did you place in charge of Al-Wadi when you left? Al-Wadi means the valley. He's referring to Mecca and Ta'if. Who did you place? He goes, Ibn Abza. He responded to him and he said, I placed Ibn Abza. And the guy's actual name was Abdurrahman ibn Abza. Abdurrahman ibn Abza was also a Sahabi. He was something called a Mawla, from the Mawali. So Sayyidina Umar, he asks him, and who is Ibn Abza? He goes, Mawla min Mawalina. He says, he is one of the freed slaves of mine. A Mawla is a slave that was freed, so he's not originally a free man. So Sayyidina Umar found this a bit controversial because he's placing a freed slave in charge of the people of Mecca who are aristocrats and they're all originally free. So he said, you put a Mawla in charge of the people of Mecca. And he said, responding to Sayyidina Umar, and he defending his position, he goes, هو قارئ للقرآن وعالم بالفرائض. He goes, no, he's not just a normal guy, freed slave, no. He's a qari of the Quran. He's a reciter of the Quran. And here I want to make something very understood and clear, because we live in 2026. So when we hear qari of the Quran, we think of like nice lights here and down payment and this much and pick me up from here and poster here and poster there and live stream. Qari of the Quran today is different. Qari of the Quran back then means a person of the Quran who stood at its boundaries, who upheld the Quran, who was a person of conduct and character, a scholar of the Quran that taught the Quran. So he says he's a qari of the Quran and he's a alim bil fara'id, and he's a scholar and the science of inheritance. So Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab, upon hearing this reasoning of why he put him, he was so happy. And he said, by God, I heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, Inna Allah yarfa'u bihadha al-kitabi aqwaman wa yada'u bihi akharin. He says, by Allah, sadaqta. He goes, you're the man. Good job. Well done. He goes, for by Allah, I heard the Prophet say that indeed Allah, He raises the status of people with this book. Like this Quran is special. The person who has it, he's raised. He has rifa' in dunya, and he's raised in the hereafter. And he yada' biha akharin, and he belittles those who abandon this Quran, he's belittled. So don't be shallow. Our understanding is not dunyawi. It's Quranic. If a person has Quran, he has everything, no matter how his social or financial or economic situation is in this dunya. If you have Quran, you're the richest human in the world.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Ismail. Allah yahfadhkum ya Rab. If I may perhaps something that always, leaves me so amazed about the Book of Allah Azza wa Jal is its universal appeal. It's just amazing how there's nothing like it. There's no parallel to it in the world. How every demographic that there is can find something for themselves in the Book of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. You can't find a book like that. A book on chemistry, a book on physics, guess what? It's going to appeal to only those who can understand its contents. A high-level book in literature, it's going to be appealing to scholars, and a book on first little readers to learn phonics is not going to be appealing to a professor, right? It's not. It's just, but when you come to the Quran and the Book of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, it literally has something to capture every single demographic. It amazes me. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless the Quran for us and teach us how to develop a meaningful relationship with it. There are a bunch of questions, and some of these questions are seeking tips and guidance on how to connect with the Quran. Ramadan is going to be very quickly at our doorsteps. So I think it's very important before this session closes that we give practical tips on how to start the journey. Like, where should I start? Should I be listening? Should I be reading translation? Should I be reading the Arabic? Should I try to finish as much as I can and read some more? Should I listen to a lecture on tafsir? What's the best way to go about it? I don't know if you have any advice, Dr. Emad.
Yeah, Jazakumullah khair, good question. I think with the connection with the Quran, obviously everyone's at a different level, but start with something. Don't feel like Ramadan is coming, I'm going to have to read the whole Quran. Now, I went to this lecture, let me go now memorize the whole Quran. Just take one step. Say I'm going to read, for example, 1 page a night before I sleep, or half a page, or whatever it is. Take this step and begin reading and connecting with the Quran. You can start with listening. You can start with all of these things. The point is to start somewhere. Now, one thing that may discourage you is you're going to start, and you may say, I don't feel anything. What's the point of doing this? I don't feel, they say that the Quran is like a shovel. And sometimes, like I began with, the heart has some things on it. It's if we think of the heart like earth, sometimes the earth has rocks. And these rocks are things that I have accumulated over time of sins and whatnot. But if you keep using that shovel and you keep digging and digging and digging, eventually it will gush forward. Eventually you will hit water. And this is 2 parts to connecting with the Quran. Imam Ibn al-Qayyim has this beautiful book called Al-Jawab al-Kafi, where he lists some impacts of sins and whatnot. But one of these things is, sometimes we commit a sin. You looked at something, you watched something, you listened to something, you stole, you cheated, whatever it is. We all know what sins are. And we think that I got away with it, nothing happened. Like, I still have my job, my car is fine, my health is fine, I didn't get struck with lightning, I didn't get punished. But actually, sometimes the punishment is that Allah, He took the Quran away from you. The Quran becomes difficult. Fajr becomes difficult. So sometimes it's about me breaking that bad habit, me saying, I'm done. I am done. Essentially, if we think of the Quran, if we look at the body, right? If we think of the Quran is like lifting weights or exercising or running on a treadmill. It makes no sense if you're running on a treadmill, but then eating unhealthy. It doesn't work because you're taking 1 step forward, 6 steps back. The intake has to match the output. So the Quran, this is why in Ramadan we experience the Quran more, because you're clean. You're clean. There's no sin. You're not looking at anything. There's no dunya distracting you. Your heart is open, right? And then you read the Quran and subhanAllah, it hits you different because you were this. So try this. Try saying, I'm going to make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm going to break this bad habit and approach the Quran in this sense. And honestly, I don't have an exact answer for you, but this is all I know for sure, 100% sure. I know this is going to work. If you are sincere and you tell Allah, I want to come to your book, He'll make a way. It will happen. When I went to the masjid, it could have been that I wasn't teaching Sheikh Osamah. It could have been that. I could have been in another class. We maybe, just passed by each other. Allah decreed for that to happen. Allah opened the way because Allah saw that there's something there in Sheikh Osamah that He brought him into this class. if you are sincere and you want, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will find ways. So at least say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I love you, I want to connect with you, and He will bring you to Him. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Last thing I want to mention, by the way, is us three here, we're just like you. I know now we look like mashayikh, right? We have the Quran memorized, we're here. But just yesterday, we were like you, sitting there. We didn't have the Quran memorized, we were this, we weren't. I remember one time Sheikh Osamah, he asked me a question. He said, what's the only companion mentioned in the Quran by name? And I said, Zayd. And Sheikh Osamah said, oh my God, you know everything. And I said, SubhanAllah. I have a question now, I call Sheikh Osamah.
Wow.
Right? I have a question, I said, SubhanAllah, right? How far, if you continue on this journey, you grow. You outgrow your teacher. You outgrow the person who inspired you. You outgrow, right? But it's needed to start somewhere, right? So you are there, inshallah, and you take the step, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open that door for you. Wallahu ta'ala.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah khair. I wanted to say, like Dr. Emad mentioned in the beginning as well, everyone is at a different level of where they are with the Quran. So the person asking this question, we're going to answer this for everyone. So you have to assess your level first. So you're going to do what you're going to do based upon your level. But first, before all of that, in order to do anything or accomplish anything, you need two things. You need to be sincere, like Dr. Emad mentioned, and you have to disconnect. So, and Dr. Emad also mentioned another good point that I want to reiterate, and that's that sometimes you don't feel it immediately, but you have to, you have to constantly cleanse your heart from all of the rust and the soot and the dirt and debris that's surrounding it, to make it light again, for it to feel it. And this is the most common question we get is, how do I feel khushu' on salah? Feeling khushu' on salah, or feeling ladha, feeling a sweetness with the Quran, or feeling ladha when you fast, or feeling ladha in any act of worship is going to come only if your heart is pure and clean and it has light, so it's acceptable of the goodness. Because if it's filthy, it's used to filth, so it wants fried foods. When you're used to it, like you want that, it tastes good to you, but once you make yourself used to eating healthy, the healthy food starts to taste good to you. So it's the same thing. You need to make your heart healthy in order for it to start, feeling good. But this requires something called effort. Like we always say this, it requires effort. So I would assume that if someone memorized the Quran, which is an amazing, mashallah, accomplishment, it required effort. So I was going to ask how many years it took. I'm assuming 3 years for you. 3?
2.5 years, yeah.
2.5? You how about you, Sheikh? 2? Mashallah, mashallah. So if I were to accumulate or bring together all the years I was memorizing, I think it's about 3.5 for me. But I did it over 8 years because I kept stopping. But what I'm saying is that 3 years is effort and 2 years is effort. 2 years is like 12. But when you think about it, like if you're 32 or 25 or 16 or 44 or 50, 2 years is nothing. You give 2 years for Quran is nothing. 1 month Ramadan, 1 month of Quran is nothing. It's not enough. But inshallah, it's a spark to start a journey. Anyway, the advice I would give is to disconnect when you're reading the Quran. Disconnect. Take your phone, put it on airplane mode. We always say this here. Put it in your sock drawer or anything, and put it in the drawer. Close the drawer. Close the door. Close the hallway door. Go downstairs. Like wallahi, this is sincere advice. You could do it any way you want. Any way you want. This is the way I do it. Like make 5 layers between you and the device, so you could then connect to the Quran. Because then you open the Quran and you reach for your pocket. It's not there. It's like all the way upstairs. Khalas. You just sit. You read. You have to exert maximum effort in the beginning, and once the shaitan tries and he loses. And every single time I ever sat to memorize, every time, it would take 20 to 30 minutes to get into it. It's like you're starting the thing, and then finally it starts, and once it starts, it's good. The car and the cold. Once it starts, it's good. You need the beginning part needs exertion of effort. The beginning part needs exertion of effort. You need to fight it off. Once you get into it, you go into it. But what do? You assess your level. If you're an individual who could read Arabic, first of all, thank Allah for this bounty, because this is a ni'mah azima. This is a huge bounty that you could read Arabic. You could read the Quran in Arabic. Perhaps you see what you're at or where you're at. If you want to memorize some surahs from the back to start off, memorize some surahs or read a khatma. And if you don't know Arabic, the same advice applies. Read it in English, read the Quran in English, so you could establish a relationship. Me personally, I would like to read from the beginning, because I want to read systematically, so I'd read from Fatiha. And this is your Quranic journey. So you should all plan on having a Quranic journey, and everyone should have a Quranic journey.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Ismail. Allah yahfadhkum ya Rabb. If I may add to your advices, look, I would say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His book, الَّذِينَ آتَيْنَاهُمُ الْكِتَابَ يَتْلُونَهُ حَقَّ تِلَاوَتِهِ أُولَٰئِكَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِهِ. Those whom we've given the book, they recite it the way it's supposed to be recited, and those are the ones who believe in it. Now, when they come to explain this verse, they teach us what does it mean to recite it the way it's supposed to be recited. Tajweed, يعني, proper recitation and the rules and guidelines for tajweed. No, that's not that. That's not what they say. يَعْمَلُونَ بِهِ حَقَّ عَمَلِهِ. The Quran has rights upon me. I need to reflect on this book. That's one of those rights. I need to live by the book. That's another one of the rights. And I need to recite the book. That's another one of the rights of the Quran. I need to honor this book in the way I hold it. And that's another one of its rights. The Quran has a lot of rights upon us. And if I want to have a meaningful Ramadan with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then I need to have different approaches to the Quran. There's one time set aside for pure ta'abbud and worship through recitation. Everyone needs to have that. Whether you could recite easily or it's difficult for you to recite. And you know what? If it's a grueling process for you to recite, realize this, you're getting double the reward. الذي يقرأ القرآن ويتتعتع فيه وهو عليه شاق له أجران. If you recite the Quran, it's difficult for you to do that. The Prophet says you'll get double the reward. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So I need to have that type of approach. And I also need to have, and maybe perhaps it's good, you know what? Start with a simple goal. This Ramadan, pick a surah. Make it your surah that is your reflection for the month. Actually, Sheikh Ismail and Sheikh Qatanani and I, the theme for this blessed month of Ramadan is going to be reflecting with the Book of Allah. And we're going to pick different surahs. But again, your personal journey, pick something. Pick one surah. And let it be within reason, ambitious but within reason. You know what? This is the surah that I'm going to spend reflection time with the Quran this month. And if I can understand the ins and outs of this surah, it would be a great achievement for this Ramadan. And that's going to be a very slow read, and perhaps I'll listen to some lectures or whatnot about that. And then I'll have another zoomed out recitation of the Quran with the translation. For those who don't know Arabic, I'm going to have a reading with the translation. And that's just to reflect on the general meanings of the Book of Allah. I'm going to find, maybe perhaps chapter summaries. There's books that just summarizes the chapters of the Quran. So I need to have these different approaches to the Quran. And then you know what? I need to have some action items for the month. I need to set, all right, if this Quran is supposed to transform me, well, let me set 1, 2, maximum 3 action items for the month. All right, what do I need? What do the takeaways need to be from this process of connecting with the Quran? This is what I would say a meaningful plan looks like through reading, reflecting, and living by it. May Allah Azza wa Jal make it easy for us. Allahumma ameen. If anything at this point, Sheikh Ismail and Dr. Emad, I want to ask if you guys have parting advice or important words that everyone here could walk away with from this lecture. What would you guys say?
Yeah, two things. One is, the memorization of the Quran, as Sheikh Hussein mentioned, is good, but that you don't have to do that completely, because that is a high goal. The point is having a connection with the Quran. Sometimes, some people just don't memorize. They can't memorize. If you cannot do that, that's fine, but keep a connection with the Quran. And one way to do this is obviously reading it regularly. And I guess the parting advice I have is, at least for me, myself, anytime I'm going through something, I find something in the Quran that gives me some kind of comfort. For example, right? If you read this, we're all human beings. We make mistakes. If you make a mistake, you read the story of our father Adam alayhi salam in the Quran, and how the Quran speaks of Adam alayhi salam, and how Adam alayhi salam, the things he went through, and you see that I went through the same thing. And in Surah Yusuf, Yaqub alayhi salam, he loses his son. Yusuf alayhi salam doesn't die, but for many years, there's this father or parent who is sad for the loss of a son. And I believe it's Fakhruddin al-Razi who he has this tafsir. And towards his Fakhruddin al-Razi's son, he died. And in the end of this surah, he wrote a note about his son. The surah hit him so much because he related to it so much because of that. You'll find that about yourself in the Quran. Anything you are going through, poverty, difficulty, wealth, tests, health, all of this, you'll find it in the Quran. All you need to do is open and begin reading. It will hit you differently. So again, we don't want to raise the standard so high if you don't have the Quran. You can still have a relationship with the Quran without having it memorized. The point is just begin reading and having that daily touch point with the Quran, recharging your battery, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the book is full of barakah. Something will come at you.
Yeah, for a parting piece of advice, I'd say don't allow this Ramadan to come and pass, and you're gonna regret it coming and passing like multiple Ramadans where you had shortcomings with the Book of Allah. Establish something. I would say do two things, like have some sort of relationship with the Quran so you could feel what the people who have a relationship with the Quran feel. And this means you're not just a cultural Muslim who was born in a Muslim family and you have nothing to do with the Quran. Because many people, 50 years of their life, 60 years of their life, 70 years of their life come and pass, and they never really did anything with the Quran. They Muslim, they love Quran. They go to Jum'ah, they nod. Like this, every Jum'ah, the Imam says something in the Quran, they nod, they accept, they love. But he has no alaqah with the Book of Allah. This is not good. We want to be Muslims who are true Muslims. True Muslims, you have to have the Quran in your life. So establish a relationship with the Quran this Ramadan. And like we said, it doesn't have to be something huge. Maybe you could memorize a surah or two, or memorize 3 surahs, because some surahs are 3 verses long. So it should take you about 15 minutes to memorize a surah. You have a brother, he converts to Islam. After 2 weeks, you see him, he has half of the Juz' Amma memorized. It's amazing. And we're 50 years old and we have nothing memorized. Exert some effort. But so establish any type of relationship with the Book of God. Establish any type of relationship. And the second thing is have a friend or make a friend for the sake of the Quran. And that will be the best friend you'll ever have in the world. There's no relationship like a relationship for the Book of Allah, and that could be through memorizing, revising, or reading like English. Like today we're going to read Fatiha, and then we're going to read Baqarah, 20 pages of Baqarah up to Ayah 190, for example. And the person reads one verse and you read a verse. And then you become inquisitive and you talk. Maybe you can make it 3 people. Because if we're getting together on all these different apps and stuff, and we have all these different group, face, this, that, everyone is always together and connected. Connect for the Quran and do something Ramadan for the Quran.
May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you both and reward you guys. And we could feel it, I could taste it. Ya Rab, may Allah bless us to make it through the next 40 days just so we get to see another Ramadan. May Allah make this Ramadan a very special Ramadan for every single one of us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from us and allow us to, live its days and its nights with ihsan. Allahumma ameen, Allahumma ameen. There's one thing on the slide, I need to mention it, Dr. Emad. It says, when is Dr. Emad coming back? We miss him. What's the answer?
MashaAllah. Allah Ta'ala alam. Allah Ta'ala alam. Inshallah, wherever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I honestly never intended to move. But Allah took me. And wherever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes you, that is the best place to be. So right now I am in Florida. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrees for me to come back, inshallah, it'll be my honor and pleasure to be back. And this is my home always. I'm in Florida, but I'm always connected to this place, this masjid, this community. And you guys don't know how blessed you are. I know Sheikh Ismail, because he lived with me in Florida, he experienced this, he always mentions it. But I promise you, there is no community like this community.
There's no place like New Jersey on earth.
There's no place like this community. And I brag all the time, and I tell people in New Jersey, we used to do this, we used to do that. But you guys are honestly blessed to have someone like Sheikh Osamah, Sheikh Hatanani, Sheikh Ismail, even yourselves, this large community here. This is a blessing. Like in Florida, one thing that really shocked me when I moved there, the 27th night of Ramadan, I got there early to the masjid because I was like, it's going to be packed. There's no parking. I'm thinking ICPC. And I got there and there's plenty of space. And there's 2 rows. And I just felt a sense of sadness in my heart. I said, SubhanAllah. And it's such a big state. Everything is spread out. But to answer the question, I guess I miss you too. Inshallah. Inshallah, I come back. Inshallah.
Look, Sheikh Emad, this is one of the gardens of Jannah, inshallah ta'ala.
Inshallah.
The Prophet ﷺ says, when you pass by the gardens of Jannah, sit down in them. And they asked, what are the gardens of Jannah? He said, the gatherings of remembrance. This is a garden of remembrance in one of Allah's houses. And we pray that there are those who are among us who are sincere. And we pray that there's angels around us right now. We can't see them. We pray that they're making istighfar for us and asking forgiveness and Allah's acceptance for us. And this garden is coming to a close. But inshallah, the reunion will be in Jannah. So wherever you are and wherever we are, may Allah not deny us. The one who gathered us on His remembrance in this dunya, may Allah not deny us to enter Jannah collectively, all of us together with our families and our community and our ummah in His rahmah. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma ameen. جزاكم الله خير everybody. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.